Hey, fellow film fans, England Teen here for the Extreme Movie Show, and we're going to be talking about some Sean Connery. And I just realized I left the movie on right here. This is what I've been watching all day. And we're going to be talking. What the hell is that?
It's a sigh.
Why?
Because Sean Connery died.
Oh, okay. I was like, So yeah, unfortunately, Sean Connery died. I gotta say, and I do this a lot, and it pisses people off. Not a big surprise. The man was 90. I did the same thing. Look, I'm a big Alfred Hitchcock fan. When Jimmy Stewart died, I was like, he was damn near 90.
Oh.
You know? So yeah, this happened. He'd been retired since the misstep of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So we haven't had a lot of new Sean Connery things. But what we're going to be talking about is our favorite movies, and maybe touch upon the things that made us like him as an actor. And what was the first thing you saw where you said, "Oh, that's Sean Connery"? What would you say that would be, Rob?
It's James Bond, and I know that's the real obvious answer for most people or a lot of people, but we can say that for last because we can always talk about that all day. But I just saw this guy acting, and he was a spy, and it was everything that a kid could ever dream of being. And that's one of the main things talk about with Sean Connery, even though we argue about the different Bond films and how good they are and successful and how they've changed over the years. But yeah, it's that. But let me talk about what's a close second at something that actually doesn't get brought up a lot. Being big into science fiction, being big into action kind of films, stuff like The Thing and John Carpenter films, late 70s, early 80s. He was in a movie called Highlander that I went, This is the same guy that's a spy, but he's a bit more like a cop in space sort of thing or whatever. And I just remember I think it was pretty cool. And I'd already recognized, I think, the name of the guy that wrote the screenplay or was involved in it, if I recall correctly, a guy named Alan Dean Foster, who did a lot of science fiction over the years. And I just remember kind of liking it. I had not seen it in a very long time. It's one we've discussed doing on Kicking It or somewhere on the Extreme Movie Show, but Outland comes to mind immediately.
It was one of the first films, and I've mentioned this a couple of times. You and I are the original HBO generation as far as kids are concerned. And Outland was one of those movies that popped up. Now, I didn't know his name in Outland, but we watched this. It was a really cool film. Once again, back then, I have no idea. I haven't revisited it probably in about 30, 40 years since we first saw it on HBO. The movie that I went, oh, okay, that's Sean Connery. That's the dude from, because Outland made me go, oh, okay, it's that guy. But it was Highlander that made me know his name. Because that was also a movie that ended up showing up on HBO, and I was like, "Oh, okay." In all honesty, James Bond was James Bond. I never thought of Sean Connery as James Bond. To me, it was just and I know this sounds silly because it's probably far later in life that I really do want to admit to me believing that. But James Bond was James Bond. And I always thought it was always Sean Connery. Of course, you did, and then it was Roger Moore. But I never really, it almost like watching an animated film. I never really cared who the actors were. I didn't know Roger Moore's name, nor did I know his filmography. And Sean Connery was the same thing. But when I saw Outlander, and then I saw Highlander, I was like, okay, this guy, I like this guy. How about you, VENKMAN? You're a little bit younger. Not your first introduction.
First introduction was probably James Bond. Mm-hmm. Remember, because I watched those with my folks, when I was a kid. I'd have been like 6 or 7 watching those movies. And then when I got a little older, I was like, hey, I can finally watch Highlander because of the nudity scene there. I was able to watch it when I was younger. I had to wait till I was like in my teens. Mm-hmm. Those were my 2 big roles and all for them. And then I started branching out. I'm like, well, what's his other movies he's been in? Okay, it was in Outland. It was Outland, yeah. That was another fun movie with that. And then there was another one. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's him in the red leather.
Oh, Zardo!
Yes,
You're going there. Alrighty.
Because I was like, wow, I just watched Logan's Run. I'm like, Sean Connery's in a movie. I'm like, whoa, this is like out there.
Well, in all honesty, and there's the thing. That's why I mentioned, when did you realize this was Sean Connery? Because for me, I'd been watching him forever and a day and didn't know it, because there was a movie that I loved, and we ended up talking about it when we were talking about the 1970s films, and it was The Man Who Would Be King. I saw that with my grandparents, and I loved it. I mean, this is just an incredible film. But once again, I think when you're younger, you're not really putting two and two together as far as who are the actors and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, saw Goldfinger, but it wasn't until we got HBO and I'm really able to pay attention to film. And you could ask Rob, I really kind of fell into being
we had all the Bond VHSs. My dad would watch them all the time. He'd get home from work. My dad would work at 70+ hours factory stuff. On the weekends, the Saturdays he was home, he'd pop on the movie, like he'd start watching the James Bonds, and so was Sean Connery. He was a big Sean Connery fan. He's like, yeah, Roger Moore, but he's like, dude, Sean Connery, that's what he liked. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I like Sean Connery a lot, is my favorite Bond.
Well, if you're going to say, we're going to grab a couple of movies each, and I understand it doesn't matter which one you talk about, because I'm sure all of us could talk about a whole bunch of these. But if I were to say, okay, Rob, if you were to want to bring up a movie, which one would it be? Which one would you like to talk about, to highlight and go, you know what, this is one you should check out? Because,
you know, it's funny because with Sean Connery, he never really, to me, had, and maybe I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, and this is kind of how we do these streams, I never really thought of him, because we were growing up as teenagers and so he'd already been well established. I never thought of Sean Connery as somebody having a lull in his career. And so I just assumed that, like, when we saw Outlander, we'd see whatever's TODD or Highlander or anything, that, okay, every couple of years there's going to be a movie coming out, it's going to be him in it. And so to me, I didn't realize until about, you got to go with Indiana Jones here, playing his father in here, that I went, holy crap, here's a guy that I really loved Harrison Ford at the time. I'm not crazy about him now, but I still like a lot of stuff that he's done. And he was super hot for many years at the time, and not because of Star Wars people, but for other stuff.
Yeah, he broke away from Star. He was great in Star Wars, but he broke away from Star Wars and just became huge.
But here you have, especially after that disgusting second Indiana Jones film, you've got the third one where they're in Venice and he's playing his dad. And I thought, he actually looks like he's having fun. It almost seemed like he was breaking character to me. But there was a few scenes in there that I thought, wow, he really did well. And I'm going to be straight with you. I don't know how good of an actor I consider him. And I don't care, because he's one of the few people, like a Steve McQueen and all that, I don't care about their acting ability where they can act like a tree or a sad tree or any skill level crap at all. I care about their charisma, what comes off, because like you said earlier about Highlander, when you saw him, you went, oh, that's Sean Connery. For me, with Outland and James Bond, I went, oh, it's this guy. He intrigues me. And I just want to see more like him.
One thing to go on what you just said, Han Solo, Harrison Ford and Sean Connery are both what I call personality actors. Humphrey Bogart being another one. You don't see a lot of character work from them. And most of the time you can look at them and go, you're playing Sean Connery, you're playing Harrison Ford, you're playing Humphrey Bogart. But I will point out, as Joe Rogers and you have said, and by the way, hello to Joe Rogers, hello to Jim Sorensen, thank you for joining us. Joe was saying the first time he remembered hearing his parents and their friends praising Sean Connery, it was about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That, my friends, is character work, because he is not Sean Connery in that movie. There are some times where Sean Connery pops through, but for the most part, he's a foppish professor. He's not the confident James Bond that he is, or he usually plays. So yeah, I think that's a great pull. I think that really is.
The scene in there where he's talking with the son and they're kind of like bonding or whatever, because he's all butthurt that he was named after the dog and all that stuff, and they're talking about Ilsa or whatever her name is, the hot blonde or whatever, and he's talking about how he slept with her first, and it's around, a ship passing, and I'm like, no big deal.
Yeah, like, how did you know she talks to her in her? Yeah. That was really good. But it was the other stuff. It was him doing the bird thing, and then him putting his umbrella over his shoulder and doing the little poem, and him reacting and interacting with Marcus Brody was just, you could tell I think understood he wasn't the hero of the story.
No.
Let Harrison Ford be the hero. He's his dad. So yeah. What about you, Venkman? What do you have to say about Indiana Jones and
Indiana Jones Temple or Last Crusade? One of my favorite scenes is when they're tied up. Yes, when they're bonding together.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Yeah, and then everything's on fire, and then like they finally get out, and then they're like, okay, we go, and they hit this lever. He's and they're going in, and it's doing like an Abbott and Costello thing, spinning around, and they're like, oh, how's it going? Click again. It's like,
it's and that scene also shows his that he can do physical comedy, which guys, Outland, Highlander, Zardos, Man Who Would Be King. You didn't see that kind of goofiness since his cameo in The Longest Day. And yes, he has a cameo, and it's amazing. And by the way, if you ever watch Saving Private Ryan versus Longest Day, the ship opens up and it's like, oh, let's go get them, boys, versus getting shot up. But he plays a guy who's gung-ho, and he runs out of the boat and falls in the water, and so it is it's played for comedy, and you don't see that kind of physical humor until Indiana Jones. So.
I want to point out, those are the two roles. Is Indiana Jones playing the father, and then the role is always been known for is James Bond. But one of my favorite movies by him is The Rock. Nicolas Cage.
I was not the biggest fan of The Rock because I thought it was like Independence Day, where it's just so silly, and I get it, and there's some good lines in there. Don't get me wrong; the whole prom queen thing is gold.
Holman, screw the prom queen. Losers complain about their best.
I mean,
I switched it, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So what do you like about The Rock?
What I like about The Rock is that they need him to like basically break into it. He's the one guy ever escaped from that place, Alcatraz. Now they want him to help him break back in. He's like, well, what's in it for me? He's like, well, you won't go to jail. He's like, well, just give me enough time so I can be with my daughter and stuff, and like I said, I love Alcatraz, and then you're combining that with like Sean Connery. It's like, dude, it's cool. And then of course we get the nerve gas with Nicolas Cage. It's like all my threes going together. Nicolas Cage.
It's in my opinion, it's the one true good movie from Michael Bay. Like, you could say, okay, I enjoyed this part or that part was okay, and this is all right. But if you want to know, this is the
Michael
one
Bay's
movie
acceptable hit.
I could probably tear apart every other movie he's made with ease, but The Rock is just too much freaking fun. It does suffer one thing from Michael Bay: one too many car chases. Like that the opening car chase literally has nothing to do with the plot, because he's going to see his daughter. Yep. That's it. He doesn't show up with his daughter at the end. We don't have a payoff to all of that. It's literally just a 30-minute freaking car chase for car chase sake.
Yep.
Gotta cut it down just a little bit. So yeah, it does suffer a little bit.
But I love him being the expert and the thing. Like it's like he's old guy. He's like look at him like, this guy's kind of crazy. What's up, trust him? And he's like, well, if you don't want my help, good luck. I'll be on my own. I don't need your help.
Well. Oh yeah, I love that. Where are you gonna take care? And he just kind of does this, and Nick Cage is like, "Okay, whatever. What's that mean? I don't know." If you're gonna say anything about that, and Sean Connery definitely in The Rock, you can use one word, and it's just cool. Rob, you could say you don't like it. I get it, because I'm the same way with damn near every other Michael Bay movie. But you got to admit, it's freaking cool. Oh. And that's Sean Connery in a nutshell in that one. By the way, I love the reaction, the interaction between him and Nicolas Cage when they drop that big ass thing on that one guy, and the leg is still sitting there, and he's trying to get. He goes, "Can you do anything about that?" And the leg's just sitting there twitching. You want me to kill him again? Yeah, it's a fun film, to say the least. It's a very fun film.
And I think that's also that was my first introduction to Nicolas Cage, was The Rock back in '96 when it came out. So I was like, Sean Connery's like, I want you to watch this man. He's to be the next star. I'm like, thank you.
There you go. Before I get to mine, let's see. Hello to Tehillium. Zach is coming in saying R.I.P. to the great Sir Sean Connery. And it's good to see you too, Tehillium. The Rock, where he was a prisoner returning to. Yep. What about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? We might get to that one. I liked his mentorship to his American counterpart, says Tehillium about The Rock, and Bond does play some good support mentorship roles. Yeah. So I brought it up. And I know this is a movie that you two, I'm probably going to go solo on this one, but I brought it up backstage. One of the movies that affected me most, you want to talk about a guy I had no idea who he was. When I was a little kid, my parents took me to see a movie called Darby O'Gill and the Little People. It's on Disney Plus. It's a Disney film. And it's a dark film, man. This guy goes into the woods. They're Irish, and he kidnaps the Gnome King, and so he gets 3 wishes. This deals with a lot of stuff. It's even got the banshees coming in and everything. It's a really good film for the time. Great special effects, and it was a film that gave me nightmares because of this banshee. The old man's daughter, who was Sean Connery, plays the love interest. You know, the hero man. She's dying, and the old man wishes that he gets taken in her place, and this banshee comes in. It's really scary. But one of the things that got me about this film, and I highly recommend it, is that it's the one movie I ever saw Sean Connery sing in. It's his musical. I like the musicals, and it's the only damn song in the movie too. And he does this whole song about she's my dear, my darling one, and it's this little Irish folk song and everything. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend the movie, even though I know I'm the only one here who saw it. But
I've seen it. I just when I was a kid. Okay, whatever. Yeah, it's not horrible. I mean,
as a
it's
kid, I'm gonna give another try to it to see if it holds up. But definitely
another movie that I did like and I didn't like for certain reasons was First Night. That's another one I have to rewatch again because Richard Gere.
Because it's Richard Gere.
I know Richard Gere stealing his lady, man. It's just like
that's what Richard Gere does. It's
King Arthur, and you get Richard Gere's Lancelot.
Me and Rob stand on different islands when it comes to Richard Gere. Rob's a bit more of a fan than I am, but I tend to like his movies, but not him. Although later in life,
Sean Connery's the kind of guy who gets women. Mm-hmm. And then you've got people like Richard Gere, who's the kind that's good at stealing them. And there's a thing to that. It's true.
Okay.
Just saying.
The only way he got this one is by Sean Connery allowing his character to die.
First Night.
So Joe Rogers is responding to Darby O'Gill, saying I saw it when I was a kid too and should watch it again. I would love to do like a review or something like that for it. I think. Okay, Rob, what else? What else would you bring up?
Well, kind of continue the theme about Richard Gere stealing ladies because he's so damn slick and smooth about it. That's what makes him great. He's not direct at it. With somebody like James Bond that we think of here with Sean Connery, he just gets him because he's just that damn good of a guy. I think that's going to lead into this next movie because I think the theme for me that I really appreciated about Sean Connery is seeing him doing a remake of Thunderball from a different production company the same year. Octopussy came out in 1983 was just mind-blowing to me. 2 Bond movies in 1 year and seeing them and him being 50-year-old and winking at the camera. It's a fun little watch, but that's not the movie I want to talk about. It's about the fact that in these movies and older, he still seems like a man's man, and he doesn't lose it despite the fact he's older, has a wig, whatever you want to call it, it's put on a few pounds. He's still a man, and nowhere is this more apparent to me than Pete Catherine Zeta-Jones in the late 90s when you're talking about a movie called Entrapment, because it's obviously a blatant ripoff of Stephen Queen, the movie that whose name escapes me, the Thomas Crown Affair. Yeah, which I think is a phenomenal movie, right? And then you have their own version of it, so I'll let that go. But if there's any way a 60-year-old woman or 60-year-old man pulls, like a 25-year-old woman in her prime, like Catherine Zeta-Jones, I could believe he could do it in this kind of role. I just do. And call me naive, call me a goof, but as a guy, you go, yep. I'm outlining just like Al Bundy. I still got it, but you really do got it, and you go, it makes sense. Yeah. If you're a thief, you live life on your own terms, and you got gazillions of dollars, and here you got a woman that's athletic, and the whole laser thing that everybody always remembers, where everyone's just kind of staring at her, watching her go through it. Oh my God, when Zorro came out, Jesus. And so for me, it's really an absurd movie. It's over the top. It's one we've been holding back on doing here, and I think we'll obviously be getting into it sooner now. But yeah, Sean Connery growing older and being in that kind of mentor type role, like in Indiana Jones, like in Highlander, like in this movie. That's what really made me like him more than just him saying, okay, he was great in Bond movies in the 60s and, the crappy one in the 70s. So, I mean, for me, he only got bigger as he got older because of that, and some of his other films too. But that aspect about him being a man and not being a wallflower or being reduced to something else, it was really proud to watch him age gracefully, and I really appreciated that about him.
All right, there we go. At least he's on screen this time. So I got to say about Entrapment that as much as I did enjoy the film, but
play it. There you go.
Whenever I think about this movie, whenever I think about that movie, I think about that part in the trailer where she's just going right under the under the beams. Holy Toledo. Yeah. Prime Kathy. Yeah. How about you, Venkman? What's next? What would
if we're going with Entrapment, we're gonna go back to the Avengers, 1998.
Really? Okay, no, you're out. You're out. All right. Why? First of all, why did you like the Avengers, and why would you bring that up?
I'll just bring it up. It's okay movie. The next one I want to bring up though is Dragonheart.
Oh, I was going to talk about that one as well.
We can talk about it right now together
because I think you got James Earl Jones. We know about him. We know even, of course, Liam Neeson has that voice, but Sean Connery also has a very distinct and powerful, commanding voice. And another great trailer moment was "I am the last one," where he's talking about how Dennis Quaid hunted down the dragons and everything. And we're talking about the first one, not the sequel. That first one was.
And before we dive into the movie, I want to just point out this movie basically proves that Sean Connery, just his voice alone, you don't even have to see his face, sells a movie. Mm-hmm. This is why I was so ticked off when they canceled that Highlander game, because we could have had Sean Connery doing voice acting of the original guy. It's a character.
And it's that freaking voice. I do remember I met. We were doing the premiere for Flipper, and they gave me a whole bunch of trailers, and I was trying to tell them, give me more Dragonheart. It's coming out in 3 weeks. You guys have not been promoting this movie, and to sci-fi geeks like myself and this looks awesome. You need to get word out about this. And they handled the marketing for that movie so poorly. And to me, that's the mark of Universal Studios. They just screw everything up. Because what we got was, in my opinion, Dennis Quaid should have been bigger than what he was. And this movie should have been bigger than what it was. Because you had a damn charming actor interacting with, at the time, some really good CGI. At a time when CGI sucked. And it's just a really good story about basically a con artist, because in order for him to make money, the dragon just kept pretending like it was getting killed and everything. So
I like the fact, like the whole part of that movie is like, he's like, wait, you're a dragon? You're talking to me? Am I going crazy? What is crazy? It's one of those movies like it knew what it was doing, and it basically capitalized on it. Obviously, now today it would have been like all horribly done. And I don't think you could recapture the moment like they did when they first came out in the 90s. Like, the 90s had some really good stuff come out, like Jurassic Park. They've made so many sequels, remakes, but you'll never capture that original version when they did this. That's why you say Dragonheart sequel. It's like, it's not really.
It sucked. Yeah. But that first one is a charming and fun film. Rob, did you ever get a chance to see this one?
I saw it when it came out and haven't seen it since, so I don't know too much or don't recall too much about it. I don't hate it, and I certainly was aware that he did it ways.
He's supposed to be the last dragon. That's what it was. Yeah, and he basically aids Dennis Quaid into killing the evil prince.
It's like, how can there be a Last Dragon 2? Wasn't the last one the last one? It's
How to Kill Your Dragon 2.
Yeah. By the way, great franchise, How to Train Your Dragon. I guess that since you picked that one out, I'm sorry to shut you out on this one, Venkman. However, you should see this film. I am going to go back to one that I mentioned before because I'm still in the 70s, and that's got to be The Man Who Would Be King. Rob, I know you've seen this one. This is about two British soldiers who they're con artists also, and they figure they're going to go into this village and try to basically get all they can out of them. And they're worshipped as gods. It's kind of like the straight up live action version of Road to El Dorado. And it is, which by the way, is a great animated film. But
with Michael Caine,
him and Michael Caine are awesome together. It's a great story. And once again, this is another movie where I think this is him playing a character. It's not Sean Connery, hubris, James Bond style. He's still being somebody different. And it's really cool to see two actors. I wouldn't say at the top of their game, because I do believe these are two actors that got better as they got older, but definitely just they knew what they were doing, and they make you watch them. Like you put these two guys on and you're not going to turn your head. And one testament to that is this is one of those films that I watched when I was like 8 and I was riveted. You know, you just got to watch it. And I think that's something that's lost today. I don't think a lot of parents today are trusting their kids to watch adult films. And by that, I'm not talking about adult films or, you know, don't exactly put on Chucky or Jason or Freddy, but you can actually trust your children to understand a movie that's not colorful and, you know, song singing, the Disney movies that I would otherwise say. You can actually trust them to watch an intelligently written film and they'll enjoy it. So yeah, that's definitely something. If you haven't watched the Man Who Would Be King, I think you should owe yourself.
I have a small confession. It's the movie that I wanted to see a long time ago, but I forgot who was in it and who the name was. But I was like, and then I saw the clip. I'm like, this is the movie. This is the one I wanted to watch. Michael Caine. I couldn't remember.
Michael Caine and Sean Connery are in this. Holy crap. Good people.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, I had spent most of the late 90s, when I wasn't playing video games or going to school, I was watching old movies, trying to catch up and stuff, and I got burnt out. I was like, I saw too many at once. I was like, overload.
Yeah. Let's see. Tahilium is mentioning, because you brought up the Avengers. Yes, it is the British Avengers, not the obvious, not the superhero Avengers.
He was Iron Man. I want you to go take that.
No, unfortunately, he was Teddy Bear Man. He was the pink Teddy Bear Man. It was like the Power Rangers, but he played the pink bear. I cannot say that was a good movie. I wanted it to be. It's Ray Fiennes. And
I don't remember it. I just remember that they made a remake of that, and there was bugs, and that was it.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was good. I really do, but unfortunately,
yes.
No.
So I never even watched the original stuff, so I can't really judge it based on the original. So
the one thing that you could say that I would steer you towards, if you were like, hey, I just want to see a movie where Sean Connery plays the villain, that is one you can point to. He's the bad guy in that one. So at the very least, you could say that. Now that we talked a little bit about one of Sean Connery's bad films, let's go back around. Rob, what do you have for us?
Well, I wanted to kind of briefly talk just about him personality-wise and what I think made him so attractive. And one of the things about just the James Bond movies in general is no matter what you think of the films, and of course we've covered a lot of them here on the Extreme Movie Show. We'll probably redo them again at some point, revisit them like we've talked about. I can understand everybody saying, it's Bond and nobody else, and I get it, because bottom line is who's going to kick ass in a fight? So Pierce Brosnan, automatically goes at the bottom of the list. While he looks great in a suit, Sean Connery, we go, well, he looks kind of like an ape, because he was a bodybuilder. He's a musclehead, and but he was in nice suits and he wore really nice stuff too. And the whole thing with that is he really did have a good package of all that stuff, and his one-liners are pretty good. He didn't kind of have the suave, oh really bit that, of course, Roger Moore had, and we can talk about other actors at some other time. But like I was saying before about his ability to kind of continue to grow as a man and make you idolize what it meant to grow old as a man and not turn into a wimp is pretty outstanding. And I think one of the things that I appreciated with him changing roles and not being Bond is, you know, that he was willing to continue to do that. But one thing I wanted to bring up and ask you specifically about, because this is not my kind of movie or one I'd refuse to see, but everything I've understood from him, he absolutely despised his entire time on the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I don't know anything about it. I could care less or give a rat's ass. I know you guys may like it or be fans. Some people that are listening may enjoy it too. But everything I've read about the movie, Ian, this is what I wanted to bring up to you, because I think it's unfortunate this was his last film.
Yeah.
A lot of things I had on it seem like a lot of people in this generation involved in the film industry decided to almost kind of whitewash it by basically saying, well, Sean just didn't understand what it is we were trying to accomplish with him in here, and he wasn't willing to do it. He wanted to fight the director and this and that. And here's Sean Connery, who's friggin' James Bond. What the hell do you really need him to do? And I don't know, the way directors are today in films and just how they are is just ridiculous. And I can totally understand Sean Connery saying, screw this. I'm going to take my 500 mil or whatever he's worth and just go play golf for the rest of my life. And I don't blame him one bit for it. And it's sad because still would have liked to have seen him in movies, but what the hell happened on the League and what was screwed up with Sean Connery? Because I got to say this, I'm going to mark out and say I don't think it was his fault.
I would actually say that as well. The reason being is because this was a mess. It's an incredible story in the comics. And what is on screen resembles nothing of the comics, and it's kind of written down. It's dumbed down. So what exactly happened? I don't know. I would have to look it up myself. I didn't get the whole thing. Let's see. It says.
I mean, like if you watch the film and you watch his performance in it, did he look like he didn't fit, or what?
In all honesty, it does. They added a whole bunch of unnecessary action scenes. There was a lot more character to the comics itself, so it might be a case of they gave him a script and then it changed to something that was completely different. They brought in an American actor that just wasn't necessary. They brought in things that just weren't necessary to it, making Mina Harker an actual vampire, which in all honesty, I liked. But what ended up happening truly was from the comic to the movie, it got dumped down. And I do agree. It really does seem like they didn't know what to do with Sean Connery. In the end, they made him another mentor instead of the hero of the show. I do believe they let Tom Sawyer have the last shot on Moriarty at the end. I could be remembering wrong, but everything that should have been Alan Quatermain's, which was the Sean Connery character, went to Tom Sawyer, which isn't even a fucking character in the. Sorry for my language. Isn't even a freaking character in the story. So. Yeah, I could see how this could drive him crazy, especially if you have a director who's not listening to input. If you have James Bond, let's just take away James Bond out of the picture. You have a guy that's been working in movies now at this point for 40 freaking years. If the man is saying, "Hey, maybe we should do it this way," freaking do it that way. Well, don't give him a bunch of about things. At least see if it can be done. So no, I'm not 100% up on the controversy surrounding it.
There's a sad way to go out, I think, in terms of his on-screen whatever. I mean, it doesn't ruin it for me, but I just think it's embarrassing that he's in a comic book film, and that's going to be his last thing that people remember him by. And I don't know if the film made money. I don't know if people liked it. I really don't know. That's the whole thing. It's like, man, what a way to go out. Not good. Should have been a Trapman too.
Yeah, it's not as horrible as the Avengers.
Well, you want to know how bad it is? I don't even remember what happened in it. I just know there's a horrible Jekyll and Hyde character. That's all. That's what it tainted the whole entire movie for me.
Oh, really? It's the Jekyll and Hyde. He was
the Hulk.
I do remember he said something along the lines of being fed up with the idiots. So obviously it was something that had to do with the way it was being made and everything. Yeah. It is sad that he went out on that particular movie. I don't hate it. I'm not a big fan of it. This isn't a movie I rewatch a lot. I remember
I can't hate it. I said I can't hate it myself because I don't remember it.
You don't remember it? Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I watched it a couple of times, when it came on DVD. I was buying everything, so I bought it on DVD and I watched it. But I don't think I've seen it in the last 15 years, maybe, maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, it's been a long time.
The last time I watched it, it was a Blockbuster was still around.
Yeah. But part of what happened was, in the 2000s, when League of Extraordinary Gentlemen came out, they were embarrassed that these things were comic book movies, and that's part of the problem. Had they just accepted the fact, like now you would get if they made League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you would get the story. And I think that would be a lot better. But back then they were embarrassed to say, well, we're a comic book movie, so they wouldn't do the comic book. X-Men show up in black leather, and they even make fun of the fact that there's costumes in the comic books. Batman, of course, going back to the TV roots with Batman and Robin. Daredevil, they not having the suit, but actually I like that suit better. I'm going to take him off the table. But there were a lot of movies that weren't really their comic book counterpart until Spider-Man came along. And then, of course, Iron Man and everything exploded. I think now that it would be a lot better than what it was. And unfortunately, they didn't have the confidence, I think, to make the movie that they should have, which is a far more character-driven film than what ended up on the on screen. But there you go. Once again, I don't know 100%, but I can only imagine if they wrote a script from the comic book, it would have been a lot more character driven and a lot more Alan Quartermain than what showed up in the film.
Okay.
There you go. Talking about that, whose turn? Okay, I guess it's my turn again. What movie? You know what? Screw it. I'm going to talk about this one right here that I've been watching today before we started up, and that's The Untouchables. This is the one he won the Oscar for. This is the fire lit under his career again that he needed, because, like you said, you didn't know he was in a slump, but guess what? For us, he was making these awesome movies, Highlander and Outland and Zardos, But for the real world, these weren't exactly burning up the box office charts. And it amazes me that more people probably remember him for Highlander than a lot of stuff, including The Untouchables. But look, I've had Rob just rail on about Brian De Palma every freaking show almost. So let me do it for a little bit.
A Brian De Palma film. Go sell it, E.
I know. He directs a perfect film here. Really. And it's one of the few perfect movies ever made. Now, I'm not saying
Hitchcock's greatest film, E?
This isn't a Hitchcock film. This is a Brian De Palma
film. That's what
film.
you always say about Brian De Palma.
This is the greatest compliment I could pay Brian De Palma. He finally made a Brian De Palma film instead of a cheap-ass knockoff of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. But yeah, it's not exactly historically accurate. There are inaccuracies, but like the scene I'm at the Canadian border run right here. That's where I am. That never happened, but it's okay. The spirit of things are still there, and that's fun. This movie is entertaining. It's got some great dialogue, and most of that great dialogue is delivered in a Scottish accent while Sean Connery's playing an Irish policeman. Occasionally Ireland pops out, but for the most part, he's doing his Sean Connery Scottish accent and just nailing it. Because ultimately, like you said when we were talking about is he an actor's actor? Is he a personality actor? And he's definitely a personality actor. You don't need it. You don't need him to come in and, me be Ireland. No, you don't need him to be doing a Lucky Charms impersonation. He is Sean Connery, and every gosh darn line out of his mouth in this movie is badass and cool. This is the one where he goes, looks just like a whatever he calls him. You brought a knife to a gunfight, and he's as he chases the guy out. It's the whole speech about you got to be prepared. What are you prepared to do next if he sends one of your guys to hospital? You send one of his to more. Great speeches by Sean Connery in this. Very well directed. There's I'm going to get the name of the movie, but there's of course you got that great tribute to what is it, the something Potemkin with the stairs and the baby carriage going down it. Just amazing. Like I said, this is a near perfect film, if not a perfect film. There's very few.
It's near perfect only because Sean Connery didn't survive the end.
Spoilers. Thank you. Okay.
Who has not?
The movie's already out.
I know. But it's in freaking incredible movie. Rob, I know you've seen this. And
I tell you, this is the movie that when it came out, everyone was talking about Costner and they were talking about him. It's like you didn't know who was supposed to be the star of the movie, and so it was definitely one of those movies that Brian De Palma, joking aside, you looked at and you went, "Holy crap, this is a really good movie," and it was like, "Wow, really adult, nice movie." And again, with the Untouchables, you're going back to something that was from the 50s that they were made in the 80s. So in the 80s, they were starting to reach for some older stuff, and they hit a home run with this one because it is a fantastic film.
Incredible. Yeah. This is one of those movies that I can put on any time. Or if somebody else is watching, I might just sit down and go, okay, yeah, this is my time now. Whatever I planned on doing for the next 2 hours has to be set aside so I can finish this film. This is one of those movies. I love this movie. Inaccuracies and all. It's just damned entertaining.
Well, the cast, you said you had John Patrick Harvey. You had what was the other guy's name? Billy Drago.
Billy Drago. No.
Yeah, he's in this.
Is he?
He's in here. He played Frank Nitti. Sean Connery, Robert De Niro, Al Capone, Andy Garcia, Kevin Costner. Yeah. There's a lot of people in here. It's even Clifton James.
Yeah, there's
Clifton James, right? I mentioned that names.
Yeah.
From James Bond. he's an officer. Cop, sheriff.
Yeah, there's quite a few there's quite a few good actors in here.
Now I'll tell you, boy, you're going too fast. You gotta relax.
Goodness gracious.
But like I said, though, it had a huge cast, and I loved about 90s, even the 80s. They paid tribute to having well-known actors. Where nowadays you get either get a bunch of nobodies and it's a hit or miss, or you get one good star and they're banking on that star's his older star power from the 80s or 90s, and then the movie is like, okay, I guess this is the last hurrah. Like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they were banking on Sean Connery's his stardom. I guess
the only question this movie makes me think of is what the hell happened to Charles Martin Smith?
And did anyone?
He was huge in the 80s as a supporting character, and then in the 90s just completely disappeared. He's the accountant character.
Yeah, Pastor Wallace. Well, the fact that they called him Untouchables, but they were able to touch him.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the greatest scenes in the movie where Charles Martin Smith does get killed. Spoilers. And across the elevator, it says touchable. Yeah. Great freaking shot too, man. And it's filled with that kind of stuff.
That's why you haven't seen him he got killed in that movie.
There you go. The scene of them running down the street for no reason. I'm like, you guys are running past your own cars. Why are you doing that? Why? Because it makes for an excellent shot. Where they're running down. Where do you come up with this information? Rule number 2 of police work: never tell the boss. It's freaking awesome.
But I like that they did film in Chicago, and I'm from Wisconsin, so we had Capone had stuff up here too. Same with Dillinger, back and forth. It's it touches on my history. I can look at old newspapers, about this stuff. It's kind of cool.
Cool. All righty. Okay. What about you, Rob? Can you top that? Untouchables?
Yeah, I can. For my last film to discuss, it's probably not his best film, but it's an interesting film, and the film could have been a lot better. That being said, I still like it a lot, and it's one of those films that, again, you talk about in the 80s where maybe to you and I, they were really cool films and different and all that stuff, and maybe a lot in the adult world he was considered slumping. I really like the movie he was in called The Name of the Rose. I mentioned this before in our Top 10 Tuesdays review and stuff, and it's kind of like a whodunit. Umberto Eco, his novels are just read the first page and you're going to be like, man, this is I got to pay attention. It's not like how reading is today. I mean, so It's just a fantastic novel, and they try to do a lot of it in the book. Of course, they have to leave a lot out, but it's just a great film where he plays like this kind of detective sort of Middle Ages Christian Slater. I think this is the first film he was in. He ends up being kind of like his assistant while they're figuring stuff out, and all this weird stuff's going in. There's a lot of really good actors in it. My boy from Moonraker, Hugo Drax, is in it. Some others are too. It's probably not a movie for everybody, but if you are a hardcore fan of his, if you're going to watch Marnie, which I was going to ask you about, I don't know if that'll be your last one or not, because I've always thought you like that. I was interested to hear your take on it. But yeah, Name of the Rose, I think, is one you got to check out. There's others you can leave out, like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I would say watch The Name of the Rose instead.
All righty. How about you, Venkman?
My last movie, I got to say, like, I'm going to go back to a Bond film, because as much as I love him in all the other movies, I love them in the Bond films. Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, I like Goldfinger and From Russia with Love equally. Both my favorite ones. I mean, look at From Russia with Love. PS2, we got a video game based off of that, with Sean Connery reprising the role as James Bond, and they added scenes to that. So those who actually love James Bond, you're looking for a gameplay, you could probably find it somewhere, even on PC, probably, I imagine. But no, I want to go back to Goldfinger. Goldfinger is, I gotta see it. That's my best Sean Connery movie. I love it. It's like, expect me to talk. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
It's tough because I think his best Bond film, roughly speaking, is From Russia with Love. I do like him in Goldfinger, but for some reason I keep drifting towards Thunderball. And I know I'm trying not to bring up Bond too much.
By the way,
yeah.
Just a little heads up, for our top 10 Tuesday, because this is an election week, we're going to be foregoing the top 10 so we can pay attention. We'll probably be doing a little live stream about the election. That being said, I'm going to repost our where we rank all of Sean Connery's Bonds, or if you guys want, we could actually re-record it. I was going to do that, so if you wanted to talk about that, like what's your favorite Bond and such like that, because I think Sean Connery, James Bond, that's a whole subject by itself. But yeah, because I'm listening to, because I did watch the video that we did before we came on, where you and I were talking about James Bond, Rob, and what you said about Thunderball and what you said about With Russia with Love. Yes, I mean, you're almost on repeat right here, man. It's an incredible film.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about James Bond till we're blue in the face and everything else there about it. Yeah, he's known for Bond, but he does have a lot more as Kellogg, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to pay tribute to him tonight, just to kind of discuss some of the experiences we had growing up, to kind of sit there and say he's not just James Bond who happened to be in a few other films. No, he's had a long and storied career, and going back, like you say, Darby Gun, the Little People, and Marnie, and all the early stuff, and then Bond, that was only a phase of his career, which he probably grew to hate, actually. So, yeah, I definitely like the second stage of his career, and I think that's a little bit more telling. Anybody can have success early on. I think when you have it sustained, and when you have it when you're older, when it's a lot more difficult to be cherished by the way Hollywood is and always has been, I think it's incredible. And I think it's just a testament to how much people really love Sean Connery. Yeah,
and you bring up Marnie a couple of times. I do enjoy that film. It's not one of my favorite of his, mainly because it's this is before Sean Connery, I think, knew who he was as an actor, and but there's a lot of stuff here when you're watching him. Like, wait a second, is this about a rape victim, and is he trying to control her the way that? I mean, it's a very dark film, especially for the time. I do recommend people watch it. Not the best Sean Connery, but then again, I don't think this is one of Alfred Hitchcock's best. But to me, that's like saying, this is the worst piece of cake. It's still really good. I would recommend it if you're an Alfred Hitchcock fan. There's just a lot of movies, and this is to go back on what we were talking about here, what you were saying. He's got a lot of great films that aren't James Bond that we are not going to be able to get to here. One of the ones none of us have talked about, mainly because every movie geek, every comic book geek knows about, is Highlander. We touched upon it, but we didn't talk about it too much. That's another one that could be brought up. He's got The Wind and the Lion, Robin and Marion.
Yeah, Wind and the Lion's very good.
So many really good movies that we could have just lost ourselves in, and these are films that just they don't get brought up. I did want to bring up one because, and I was going to make this my last one because it's not one of his grand films. As a matter of fact, it came out, it made money, and then it disappeared. And I don't think I've heard anyone talk about it, but it got me and my wife together.
Was this movie called Chalaco with Bridget Bardot?
No, it was not.
Bardot.
No.
Bardot. Come on, bro.
But
how many times do you hear that name today? None.
True.
Not at all. So anyway, yeah, I was managing the United Artists at the Florida Mall at the time, and we were told that by a friend of ours, "Hey, look, my girlfriend."
It's not Medicine Man, is it?
Dude, come on, let me tell the story. Yes, it is. Okay.
Okay.
You, but for ruining my story.
It's time,
But
man.
yeah, I said, yeah, that we'll meet her, bring her in for the Medicine Man. And it ended up being a pretty darn good movie. He plays a medical scientist who is in the Amazon rainforest looking for a cure, of course, to cancer and such. So, and they find it, and it's definitely an eco-friendly message and all that kind of stuff. But what you actually get is a really good story, a really good movie that it just doesn't get talked about because it isn't one of his grand films. Or even something that appeals to the sci-fi geek crowd, like Highlander or something like that. But
it's that kind of movie that, because you're right, it's a decent flick, but it's the kind of movie where when you look at somebody's thing, you're like, okay, I've heard of this one early on. Yeah, I'm not going to watch that because he was a bit role. And then there's the last films where you see so much of somebody's catalog, and then years later, you're like, man, that person's dead, but I kind of want to watch their movie, but I've seen everything I got, and you're going through scraping IMDb going, is there anything possibly that maybe I haven't seen, or it's been a long time, or I don't remember? And you go, man, I've never seen this one because I don't know nothing about it. But, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because we've all done that, I think, for anybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely one that I would recommend, say, over A Good Man in Africa. So, it's, definitely check that out. But also the ones we mentioned, I do believe, Rob, you brought up Wind and the Lion once before, and I think I do remember seeing Robin and Marion and enjoying that one. There are just so many good movies, and yes, I do like, and I will talk about sometime, Marnie, whenever I'm doing an Alfred Hitchcock retrospect. And in all honesty, for as much of a fan I am, I'm kind of surprised I haven't done it already.
So is like Medicine Man like the sequel to like it's like Ramirez, the long hair, in the Amazon?
Yes, it's a Highlander sequel.
Okay.
No.
Highlander Part 1.5 because it came out before that Highlander 2 crap. Which all I can say is that's got to be Highlander 2, the paycheck for Sean Connery.
Highlander 2, the quickening. Can we finish this movie already?
That's one of those movies where I hope they finished it before The Untouchables when he was in his slump, and there was like, don't put that out. Don't put it out. No, trust me.
Well, now he's untouchable because that movie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if we were to go over a worst of Sean Connery at some point in time, we could make another 53-minute video for that one too. He did have his slump, and he did some stinkers. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And
but even Medicine Man, I'm looking at the age of that woman. She was born 54. He was born, what, 1930?
Yeah.
Wow. And they were lovers in that movie?
Connery would pull that. Come on.
Yeah, he could. I mean, it's Sean Connery, but they were more respected colleagues that kind of fell into it. You know,
hippie colleagues with long hair.
Yeah, work friends. Age knows no bounds, I guess. I don't know. All righty, gang. Well, there you go.
It's just chemistry, baby.
There we don't go. All righty. Okay, gang. So there you go. That's our take on Sean Connery. And yes, as Rob said, we kind of purposefully steered away from a lot of Bond because we wanted to talk about his other things. We do, however, have a lot of videos here. I think I'm going to be reposting some over the week that kind of pay tribute to James Bond, our reviews of the James Bond movies. And on Tuesday, we'll do his we'll have a repost of the top 10, or if you guys want to get together and just re-record it, I am good with that as well. So please keep an eye out for those and that, as well as the other videos. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching. And remember, stay extreme.
Stay extreme. Have a good night, guys.